Chapter 1. The Rainy Night. The clock struck midnight when the rain began to fall in New York, transforming the city into a sea of shimmering reflections and deep shadows. On the 10th floor of an old building on 47th Street, a light was still on. It was the light of Detective Jack Malone's office, a man who had seen more than his share of darkness. Jack sat in his leather chair, tilted back, with his feet resting on the desk. The aroma of cheap bourbon mixed with the smell of tobacco from his freshly lit cigarette. He stared out the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass like silent tears. The city never slept, but on that night, it seemed even the demons of New York were hiding from the storm. Then the office door burst open with a bang. A woman walked in, drenched, with an expression that mixed desperation and determination. Her beauty was classic, as if she had stepped out of an old movie. Wavy black hair, green eyes shining with a dark secret, and a red dress clinging to her wet body. "Jack Malone?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly but filled with undeniable strength. Jack lowered his feet from the desk and leaned forward, extinguishing his cigarette in the overflowing ashtray. "That depends on who's asking," he replied with a crooked smile. "And how much you're willing to pay." The woman hesitated for a moment before stepping forward, leaving a trail of water on the floor. "My name is Evelyn Turner. I need your help." Jack gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Have a seat, Miss Turner, and tell me why a lady like you is knocking on a private detective's door at midnight on a night like this." Evelyn sat down, adjusting her figure-hugging dress. I'm scared, Mr. Malone. I received a letter. It says I'm next." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Next? Next for what?" Evelyn pulled a crumpled letter from her purse and handed it to Jack. He opened it and quickly read. The words, written in black ink, were simple but laden with threat. "You will be next." "That's not very specific," Jack said, returning the letter. "But I've seen enough to know this isn't a joke." "Who else knows about this?" "No one," Evelyn replied, her voice low. Tears filled her eyes. I have no one. Everyone who gets close to me ends up dead." Jack studied Evelyn's face, searching for signs of deception, but all he found was genuine fear. He stood up and grabbed a glass of bourbon, pouring another for her. "Here, drink this. It'll help calm your nerves." Evelyn accepted the glass with a trembling hand and took a sip. Jack sat back down, crossing his arms. "All right, let's start from the beginning. Who do you think might be after you? Someone you've had trouble with? A jealous ex-husband? A rival in business?" Evelyn shook her head, visibly confused. "I'm not sure, but I have some secrets, Mr. Malone. Secrets that some people would do anything to keep hidden." Jack let out a deep sigh. "Secrets, huh? Well, I'm no stranger to secrets, but if we're going to work together, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Let's lay it all out. No beating around the bush." Evelyn looked at Jack, her green eyes locked onto his. "Can you protect me, Jack? Can you help me find out who's behind this before it's too late?" Jack took his hat from the coat rack and placed it on his head. "You're in the right place, Evelyn. We're going to find out who's threatening you, and we'll make sure they don't get to you." As Jack turned off the lights and guided Evelyn to the exit, he knew this would be a long and complicated investigation. Something inside him told him that this case was not just about a woman in danger, but something much bigger, something that could unearth long-buried secrets. The sound of the rain continued, each drop seeming like the ticking of a clock, marking the time they had to solve the mystery before it was too late. Chapter 2. The Request for Help. The following morning brought with it a thick fog that enveloped the city like a veil. In Jack Malone's office, the weak sunlight struggled to penetrate the closed blinds. Jack was behind his desk, reviewing Evelyn's letter again. The smoke from his cigarette formed lazy spirals in the air as he thought. He knew this case was more than it appeared at first glance. Evelyn was sitting in the same chair as the night before, now dry and more composed. Her gaze was fixed on Jack, waiting for some revelation that could ease her fear. Jack finally broke the silence. "So, Evelyn, you mentioned secrets. We need to start there. What exactly are you hiding, and why would someone kill for it?" Evelyn took a deep breath, as if preparing for a deep dive. A few years ago, I worked for an organization called Ordo Obscura. It was a secret society involved in activities I would prefer to forget. I left when I realized how dangerous it was. But apparently, they haven't forgotten me. Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Ordo Obscura? I've heard rumors about them. If half of what they say is true, we're dealing with some very dangerous people. Why would they turn their attention to you now? Evelyn hesitated, visibly nervous. I stole something from them. An antique brooch, a kind of symbol. It wasn't just a valuable object. It was an item with hidden meanings for the Ordo Obscura. I thought that by taking it, I could protect people from their rituals. Jack leaned forward, intrigued. And where is that brooch now? She lowered her head, as if ashamed. It's hidden in my house. I didn't know what else to do. If they want it back, it means they are still active, and willing to kill to get it back. Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. All right, let's get that brooch and use it to our advantage. But first, I need to understand better who we're up against. Do you have any idea who within the Ordo Obscura might be after you specifically? Evelyn closed her eyes, trying to remember. There was a man, Victor. He was one of the leaders, cruel and ruthless. If anyone is behind these threats, it's him. He's always been obsessed with the power that the Ordo represented. At that moment, a phone rang, breaking the tension in the room. Jack answered with a grunt. Malone here. The voice on the other end was tense and urgent. Jack, it's Marcus. We need to talk. I have information about the Ordo Obscura, and you're not going to like what I've found out. Jack frowned. I'm with a client right now, Marcus. Can it wait? No, Jack. Can't. Meet me at my antique shop in an hour. This is serious. Jack hung up the phone and looked at Evelyn. It seems we have one more stop before we go to your house. Let's see what Marcus has to say. Evelyn stood up, grabbing her coat. Do you think this is dangerous, Jack? Jack let out a sigh and put his hat on. Definitely, Evelyn. But we're already in deep, and the only way out is to dig up all the dirt. As they left the office, the fog began to dissipate, but the sense of imminent danger only grew. The journey they were about to embark on would lead them to confront powerful enemies and secrets that many would prefer to keep buried. And Jack knew that to protect Evelyn and solve the mystery, he would need to stay one step ahead of those who were pursuing them. Chapter 3. The First Clue. Marcus's antique shop was a gloomy place, crammed with relics and dust-covered items. Every corner of the establishment seemed to whisper forgotten stories. The bell above the door jingled softly as Jack and Evelyn entered, and the smell of ancient parchment mixed with incense filled the air. Marcus, a man of indeterminate age with piercing eyes and tousled gray hair, was behind the counter. He looked up, and a weary smile formed on his lips upon seeing Jack. Malone, good to see you. And who is this lovely companion? Evelyn Turner, Jack replied. She's in trouble because of an old acquaintance of ours, the Ordo Obscura. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a flash of concern crossing his face. Ah yes, those lunatics never leave anything behind. What exactly happened? Evelyn stepped forward, telling Marcus about the threatening letter and the stolen brooch. Marcus listened intently, his eyes fixed on her, absorbing every word. When she finished, he let out a deep sigh and nodded. That makes sense, unfortunately. The Ordo Obscura never forgets a betrayal. They see that brooch as a sacred symbol, a centerpiece in their rituals. They'll do anything to get it back. Jack crossed his arms, impatient. You said you had information, Marcus. We don't have time to waste. Marcus nodded and pulled an old book from beneath the counter, opening it to a specific page. I've been researching them. I found out that the Ordo is preparing for a major ritual, something they haven't done in decades. The brooch is crucial for it. Without it, the ritual fails. Evelyn paled. And if the ritual fails, what happens? Marcus closed the book, his expression serious. If it fails, the leaders of the Ordo will lose their influence and power. We're talking about people who control a lot in the city, from businesses to politicians. They are desperate. Jack frowned, Thoughtful. That explains the urgency. And you mentioned a certain Victor, Evelyn. He could be the leader of this movement. Marcus looked directly at Evelyn. Victor has always been a fanatic. If he's behind this, you're in great danger, Evelyn. We need to get that brooch and use it as bait. Lure Victor and his henchmen out. Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. If that's what we need to do, then we'll do it. But how can we ensure they'll show up? Jack gave a half smile. With Marcus's help, we can spread a convincing rumor. We'll make it seem like the brooch will be at an exclusive auction. That will attract the sharks. Marcus nodded, starting to devise a plan. I'll spread the news among my contacts. Before long, all the members of the Ordo will know about the auction. And hopefully, Victor will take the bait. Jack placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder, giving her a reassuring look. We're one step ahead of them now, but we need to be careful. They'll play dirty, and we can't afford to make mistakes. Evelyn nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. I'm ready. Let's end this once and for all. As they left Marcus's antique shop, the morning fog had cleared, but the sense of danger lingered. Jack knew they were just beginning to peel back the layers of a much larger mystery. And with every step they took, they were closer to unearthing the secrets that the Ordo Obscura had buried so deep. The game was on, and Jack was determined to win. Chapter 4. The Encounter with the Past. The sound of footsteps echoed through the narrow, dark streets as Jack and Evelyn made their way to the next destination, the warehouse where Victor had been seen last. The place was hidden in a forgotten corner of the city, a grim monument of old bricks and broken windows. Evelyn seemed restless but determined, while Jack kept a vigilant eye on his surroundings, aware that they might be walking into a trap. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with dust and the smell of rust. The environment was illuminated only by a few hanging lights that flickered irregularly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Marcus had indicated that Victor was using the place for clandestine meetings of the Ordo Obscura, and Jack knew that finding him there could provide the answers they needed. Jack walked silently, with Evelyn by his side, toward a room at the back of the warehouse. The door was ajar, and Jack gestured for Evelyn to stay back as he moved forward, pulling out his weapon. He slowly pushed the door open, revealing a room filled with lit candles and strange symbols drawn on the walls. In the center of the room stood an altar with what appeared to be a collection of ancient artifacts, including Evelyn's brooch. Well, if it isn't Jack Malone. A deep, cold voice echoed through the room. Victor emerged from the shadows, a middle-aged man with a predatory gaze. His eyes sparkled with a mix of madness and determination. Jack kept his gun trained on Victor. Victor, you're in trouble. Hand over the brooch and get out now, or we'll do this the hard way. Victor laughed, an unpleasant sound that reverberated off the walls. Do you really think you can intimidate me, Malone? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Evelyn stepped into the room, her expression defiant. I know exactly who we're dealing with, Victor, and we're not going to let you continue this madness. Victor looked at Evelyn with a cruel smile. Ah, Evelyn, always so brave. But your courage won't save you this time. What you've done is unforgivable. You betrayed the Ordo, and now you will pay the price. Jack took a step forward, not taking his eyes off Victor. Enough with the threats, Victor. The game is over. Surrender, and maybe you'll survive this. Victor took a step back, raising his hands in an apparent gesture of surrender. Very well, Jack. You've won. But know that this is far from over. Suddenly, the room was flooded with men dressed in black, armed and ready to attack. Jack pulled Evelyn behind a stack of boxes as gunfire echoed through the room. They were surrounded. Shit, they were waiting for us, Jack growled, trying to find a way out. Evelyn grabbed Jack's arm, her eyes wide with fear. What are we going to do? Jack looked around, desperately searching for an escape. We need to get out of here. Now. With the bullets still whizzing around them, Jack spotted a side door partially hidden by debris. He gestured for Evelyn to follow him, and together, they ran for the door, bursting out of the warehouse and plunging into the darkness of the night. Outside, The fresh air felt almost surreal after the intensity of the room. Jack and Evelyn kept running until they were far enough from the warehouse, finally stopping to catch their breath. "And now?" Evelyn asked, panting. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. "Now, we take that brooch back and end the Ordo once and for all. And we make sure Victor and his goons pay for every life they've taken." As they walked away from the warehouse, Jack knew that the battle was just beginning. With Evelyn by his side, he was determined to uncover all the dark secrets of the Ordo Obscura and bring justice to those who had fallen victim to its cruelty. The night was far from over, and the true confrontation was yet to come. Chapter 5: The Trap. The tension in the city felt palpable as Jack and Evelyn prepared for the next phase of the plan. They needed to lure Victor and his henchmen out, and the only way to do that was to use the brooch as bait. The idea was simple: a fake exclusive auction at the old abandoned theater in the heart of the city, where rumors would run wild that the brooch would be sold to the highest bidder. The theater, once a gem of architecture, was now in ruins, with dusty seats and torn curtains. The stage, covered in debris, would be the perfect setting for the final confrontation. Jack knew he needed more help and called in some old police friends to support the operation. They positioned themselves at strategic points, ready to intervene when necessary. Evelyn was nervous but determined. "Jack, what if something goes wrong?" Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to convey confidence. "We're prepared, Evelyn. We have to believe this will work. And if Victor shows up, we'll catch him." Time seemed to drag as they waited in the theater. Jack's men were disguised among the few fake guests who had been summoned for the auction. Every sound, every movement heightened the tension. Then, finally, they heard footsteps approaching. Victor entered, followed by a dozen armed men. He looked confident, as if he had meticulously planned everything. Upon seeing Jack and Evelyn, a sinister smile formed on his lips. "So, you really thought you could fool me with this little show?" Victor scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. Jack kept his cool, the gun firmly in his hand. "We knew you would come, Victor, and that's why this ends here." Victor looked around, noticing the disguised men beginning to reveal themselves, weapons drawn. "You're clever, Malone, but not clever enough." He gestured, and his men opened fire. The theater was instantly engulfed in chaos. Gunshots echoed through the empty space, ricocheting off the walls. Jack and Evelyn ducked behind an old counter, exchanging fire with Victor's henchmen. The police, seeing the situation escalate, moved in, trying to regain control. Jack shouted to Evelyn, his words almost drowned out by the gunfire. "Stay down and don't leave here." Evelyn nodded, trying to shield herself while Jack stood up to confront Victor. The battle was fierce, but Jack was getting closer to his target. Finally, he reached Victor, taking him down with a precise blow. "It's over, Victor," Jack said through gritted teeth, holding the villain by the collar. Victor laughed, even bloodied and defeated. "You may catch me, Malone, but the Ordo will never be destroyed. There are many like me, and they will continue our mission." Jack narrowed his eyes, furious. "We'll see about that." With Victor neutralized and his men subdued, the police took control, handcuffing and leading the criminals away. Evelyn emerged from her hiding place, her eyes fixed on Jack, relieved but still scared. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, helping her to her feet. Evelyn nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, thanks to you. But what now? What happens next?" Jack looked around, seeing the remnants of the battle. "Now, we turn the brooch over to the authorities and make sure the Ordo Obscura is dismantled for good. It may not be easy, but we will do whatever it takes." Evelyn smiled, finally feeling a bit of hope. "Thank you, Jack, for everything." Jack returned the smile, a rare moment of softness on his hardened face. "We're in this together, Evelyn, and we will make sure those who play with the lives of others pay dearly for it." As they left the theater, the feeling of imminent danger began to dissipate. The battle had been tough, but they were closer to ending the threat of the Ordo Obscura. Jack knew there was still much to be done, but with Evelyn by his side, he was ready to face anything. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it seemed a little brighter. Chapter 6. The Revelation. Jack and Evelyn were back at the office, exhausted but relieved with the capture of Victor and his men. The brooch, now in an evidence bag, lay on Jack's desk, shining under the soft light of the lamp. The feeling of an impending victory hung in the air, but Jack knew there were still missing pieces in this puzzle. The door creaked open, revealing Marcus, who entered with a worried expression. He closed the door behind him and looked at Jack and Evelyn seriously. "We have a problem," Marcus said bluntly. "There's more going on here than we imagined. Victor may be in custody, but he's just a piece on the board." Jack frowned. "What did you find out, Marcus?" Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down, carefully picking up the brooch. "I've been examining this brooch and found that it's not just a symbol. There are ancient inscriptions on it, a sort of map. It seems that the Ordo Obscura is after something much bigger, something involving power and influence beyond our comprehension." Evelyn looked at the brooch, her eyes widening. "What does that mean? And why didn't Victor tell us anything about this?" "Because he probably didn't know," Marcus replied. "Those at the top of the Ordo are the guardians of these secrets. Victor was just an executor, a tool. The real leader is still out there, and he's the one pulling the strings." Jack slammed his hand on the table, frustrated. "Then we need to find this leader, and fast. Marcus, can you decipher these inscriptions?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, but it will take some time, and we need to be prepared for whatever we find." As Marcus began to work on the brooch, Jack turned to Evelyn. "We need more information about the Ordo, someone who can give us an edge. Do you know anyone who can help?" Evelyn thought for a moment before answering. "There is one person, an old member of the Ordo who left many years ago. She lives reclusively now, but she may have the answers we need. Her name is Cassandra." Jack grabbed his coat. "Let's go find her. Every minute counts." Cassandra's house was on the outskirts of the city, hidden among a dense forest. The property was old, almost mystical, with tall trees and a wild garden. Jack and Evelyn walked along the stone path to the door, where Jack knocked firmly. The door opened slowly, revealing a middle-aged woman with long gray hair and piercing eyes. She studied them for a moment before speaking. "You are Jack Malone and Evelyn Turner. I've been expecting you." Jack exchanged a surprised glance with Evelyn before replying. "We need your help, Cassandra. The Ordo Obscura is after something big, and we need answers." Cassandra stepped aside, allowing them to enter. "I know, and I have the answers you seek. But first, you need to understand the true nature of the Ordo." Sitting in a cozy room, Cassandra began to tell her story. She spoke of the founding of the Ordo Obscura, a society that initially sought knowledge and enlightenment, but had been corrupted by power and greed. The brooch, she explained, was the key to an ancient secret, an artifact that promised unlimited power to those who knew how to use it. The leader of the Ordo, the one you're looking for, is known only as the Master. He manipulates everything from the shadows, ensuring that no one knows his true identity. But there's a way to find him. Jack leaned forward, eager. "How?" Cassandra looked directly at him, her voice grave. "You need to follow the map on the brooch. It leads to an ancient sanctuary hidden in the depths of the city. There you will find the answers. But be prepared, as the path is dangerous, and the Master won't let you get there easily." Evelyn squeezed Jack's hand, feeling the gravity of the situation. "We're ready. We have no other choice." Jack nodded, determined. "Let's end this once and for all." As they left Cassandra's house, night was beginning to fall, and the sense of imminent danger intensified. They were closer than ever to uncovering the secrets of the Ordo Obscura, but also closer to the final confrontation with the Master. Jack knew the journey would be arduous, but with Evelyn by his side, he was prepared to face any challenge. The fate of the city, and perhaps something much larger, depended on them. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. The night in New York never felt so oppressive. Shadows danced under the streetlights as Jack and Evelyn made their way to the location marked on the map in the brooch. an ancient sanctuary hidden in the city's catacombs. The journey was silent, both absorbed by the gravity of the mission ahead. They knew this was their chance to stop the Ordo Obscura once and for all. Descending narrow, dimly lit staircases, they arrived at a stone door adorned with ancient symbols, similar to those on the brooch. Jack pushed the door open, revealing a vast underground hall illuminated by torches casting flickering light on the stone walls. In the center stood a hooded figure before an altar, surrounded by its followers. "Welcome, Jack Malone and Evelyn Turner," the figure said, its voice echoing through the catacombs. "I am the Master. I was expecting you." Jack raised his weapon, his eyes fixed on the Master. "This ends here. You and your dark society will no longer terrorize this city." The Master laughed, a cold and joyless sound. "Do you really believe you can stop the Ordo Obscura? We are older than this city, deeper than its foundations. But if you so desire a confrontation, then let it be." With a gesture from the Master, the Ordo's followers advanced, armed and ready to fight. Jack and Evelyn braced themselves for the confrontation, knowing they were outnumbered but determined to win. The first shot echoed through the hall, igniting a chaotic confrontation. Jack and Evelyn moved with precision, using every available cover. Jack took down several followers while Evelyn, displaying impressive courage and skill, neutralized others. The sound of gunfire and screams resonated, creating a cacophony of violence and resistance. As the battle unfolded, the Master retreated to the altar, performing a ritual with the brooch. A sinister light emanated from the artifact, filling the hall with a palpable energy. Jack realized he needed to act quickly. "Evelyn, cover me," Jack shouted, running toward the altar. Evelyn opened fire, keeping the remaining followers at bay while Jack advanced. He leaped over debris and lunged at the Master, interrupting the ritual. The two fought hand to hand, each blow reflecting the intensity of their respective desires. Jack to rid the world of evil, and the Master to secure his power. Finally, with a supreme effort, Jack managed to disarm the Master and hold him by the collar. "This is for the blood you've spilled," he said through clenched teeth before knocking the Master out with a precise strike. With the Master defeated, the remaining followers surrendered or fled. Evelyn ran to Jack, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "We did it," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. Jack nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes, we did. But we still need to ensure that the Ordo Obscura never rises again." They took the brooch from the altar, now devoid of its sinister glow. Jack and Evelyn knew they needed to turn over the artifact to the authorities, along with all the evidence they had gathered about the Ordo. This would ensure that those involved would be held accountable and that the Dark Society would finally be dismantled. As they left the catacombs, the feeling of mission accomplished was tangible. The night was still dark, but a new dawn was on the horizon, a symbol of hope and renewal. Jack and Evelyn, though exhausted, felt they had made a difference. "In the end, justice always prevails," Jack said, looking at Evelyn with a tired but satisfied smile. Evelyn smiled back, holding Jack's hand. "And we will make sure it stays that way together." The case was closed, but Jack knew that a detective's work never truly ends. There would be other mysteries, other shadows to unravel. But for now they could rest knowing they had done what was right. And that was what truly mattered. Chapter 8: The Dark Outcome. The next morning brought a different New York. The air felt lighter, as if the city was breathing a sigh of relief after the fall of the Ordo Obscura. Jack and Evelyn were back in the office, both still marked by the intensity of the confrontation in the catacombs. However, the feeling of triumph was undeniable. Jack's desk was covered in reports and evidence. He was on the phone with the police captain, ensuring that every captured member of the Ordo was properly interrogated and prosecuted. Evelyn was sitting on the couch, watching the city's movement outside, reflecting on everything they had been through. Jack hung up the phone and turned to Evelyn. "The captain said that most of the captured followers are already singing like canaries. We have enough information to completely dismantle the Ordo Obscura." Evelyn smiled, relieved. "That's great, Jack. We did it." Before they could celebrate, the office door opened. Marcus walked in, carrying a thick envelope. He looked more excited than ever. "Jack, Evelyn," Marcus began. "I think you're going to want to see this." Jack took the envelope and opened it. Inside were old documents, photos, and a handwritten letter. He began to read aloud. "Dear Jack and Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means you succeeded. The Ordo Obscura is finally exposed, and the city can begin to heal. There is something you need to know. The Ordo was not just a secret society. It was a network of corruption that infiltrated every level of society. These documents prove the Ordo's connections to high officials, business leaders, and even members of the security forces. You hold the power to clean the city once and for all. Signed, Cassandra." Evelyn was speechless. This is huge. We can take down not just the Ordo, but all the corrupt individuals who benefited from it." Jack nodded, his gaze determined. "Let's take this to the press. We'll make sure the truth is revealed. Justice must prevail." With Marcus's help, they began organizing a press conference, inviting reporters and journalists from all the major media outlets. When the time came, Jack's office was filled with cameras and microphones. Jack and Evelyn stood at the front, with Marcus beside them. Jack started to speak, his voice firm and clear. "Today, we reveal to the world the dark secrets of the Ordo Obscura. This organization, which operated in the shadows for too long, corrupted and manipulated our society. But with this evidence, we expose their connections and bring the truth to light. Justice will be served, and those who benefited from corruption will be held accountable." Evelyn added, her voice full of emotion. "This is a victory for all the victims of the Ordo. It's a new beginning for our city, and we will continue to fight to ensure that something like this never happens again." Reporters began to ask questions, and Jack and Evelyn answered confidently, knowing they were doing the right thing. The press conference was a success, and the news quickly spread throughout the city and beyond. Later that night, Jack and Evelyn were back in the office, finally able to relax. The soft light from the lamps created a calm atmosphere after the tumultuous events of the past few days. Jack poured 2 glasses of bourbon, handing one to Evelyn. "To justice," Jack said, raising his glass. "To justice," Evelyn echoed, clinking her glass against his. They drank in silence, savoring the moment of victory. Evelyn looked at Jack, a new determination in her eyes. "Jack, what now? What comes next?" Jack smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "Now we carry on. There's always more work to be done. But we know we can face anything, and we will do it together." Evelyn smiled back, feeling a new hope blossom within her. They had faced the darkness and won, and they were ready for whatever came next. As the city slept under a starry sky, Jack and Evelyn knew they had made a difference. And this was just the beginning of a new era of justice and integrity, for New York and for themselves.